Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Built to Serve podcast. We are super excited today. We have with us Miss Vickie Hall. Hey, good morning, Miss Vickie.
Good morning.
All right, it's great to see you. So thankful that you could be on our podcast. We are super excited about having you here. You are our very first military spouse that we've had on our call, so this is pretty exciting. So we're looking forward to you teaching us a lot of things.
Okay.
A lot of things. So just tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? And just tell us a little bit about Vickie.
Well, I grew up in Gonzales, Louisiana, just right down the street from Baton Rouge, here in Baton Rouge, and just born and raised here, and that's about it. Went to college at Northwestern on a band scholarship. Been working ever since.
So tell me, band scholarship. You shouldn't have started with that. What? Oh, I don't even know what it's called. Instrument.
Yeah, flute and piccolo.
The piccolo.
Yes.
What is is that like a flute?
It's an octave. It's like an octave higher.
Oh, I got you.
So it's smaller, but it's an octave higher.
This may surprise you, but I have no talent at all to play any instrument. I always wanted to play the bagpipe. You think you could play the bagpipe if you did a flute?
I don't think I can.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool.
I don't really think I can.
Yeah, I tried to. I was at Disney World one year at Epcot in the UK area, and I bought like how to play a bagpipe set. It's still in the box, but I bet it's fun to try. But anyway, it's great to have you here. My mom was in the band. I thought that's kind of cool. A little extra tidbit there. That's free. So let's talk about this then. Tell us about how you came to Performance Contractors.
Okay. I started at Performance about 10 months ago. Excited to be here, just looking for a step back to be able to have a little bit more time at home. And so a recruiter reached out, and it just kind of went from there.
That's
awesome. It was a good fit.
Now, what do you do here for us?
I work in the contracts department, so I do contracts management.
I'm sorry. I'm sure that's tough.
When you're a contract geek, it's fun.
Oh, I got you. Yeah,
fun.
In the EHS department, we'll look at some contracts sometimes, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Luckily now it comes on a PDF. But in the old days, it was printed, and I would look at it. I'm like, no, I can't read all that. So thankful for what you do, for sure. Thankful. So what did you do before you came to Performance, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I worked in industry for over 25 years. But my last job was at LSU School of Medicine, and the School of Medicine Baton Rouge campus, and all their contracts and operations and finances and everything. So I wanted to come back into industry.
It's very surprising working at Performance because we're such a supporter of LSU, and I'm from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I did wear my color today just to help out a little bit. So
I see that.
Yeah, I know. We may have to edit that out. Maybe you can change the color of my jacket. But yeah, super excited about what LSU's doing, and even for the School of Construction and what our Performance is playing their part in it. So that's going to be really cool. So tell us, our podcast is really geared around military and kind of those that have served and spouses. And tell us how and what your connection is with the military through your spouse.
Okay. So my husband, Jim, we've been together 26 years, about to be married 26 years in August.
Congrats on that. That's
thank you.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Thank you. Blessed to have him. So Jim was in the Air Force, and when I met him, he had been out of the Air Force for about a year, was working at ExxonMobil. And, we fell in love. It was kind of a quick, when you know, you know. Mm-hmm. And when I guess being a spouse of a veteran, you really don't think about that whenever you marry someone and they're not actively in the military. So for me, with Jim, things presented themselves much later and impacted us and our family, just with the things that his disabilities and things like that have come through. But
that's that. Hey, So do you know some of the bases, or could you tell us some of the bases that he served at?
He was in California. He was in Colorado.
Probably Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs. He was a lineman in the Air Force, and so he was a lineman. And then he also did when he went to Colorado, they were redoing all of the underground electrical, so all the underground under the Air Force Academy.
So how many years did he stay in?
4.
Yeah, okay. I got you. Yeah, I think it's really interesting speaking to a spouse because there's a whole different dynamic. Men tend to we think that we're probably presenting something different than we probably are, right? We're trying to present something the spouses usually can see straight through that. My mother and my father got together after my dad had served, and he was in the Army for 2 years. So I kind of get a little bit of that dynamic, He was always super proud to be in the military, but it wasn't something they talked a lot about because they wasn't together during that time.
Right.
So I think some of the stuff, just like what you're saying, was discussed later on, and then kind of came out. My dad served in Germany for a couple of years, so I tried to take him over there as he got older, but I couldn't really make that happen. So I understand.
Yeah. So it was the same thing. I mean, that you're saying. We didn't really talk a lot about him being in the military. Jim was always very grateful to serve, very patriotic, different things like that. But when it came to recognition of being a veteran, or he just didn't,
Yeah.
He has a lot of humility.
Understood. Yeah.
So we just didn't talk a lot about it.
Yeah, that's what most veterans are like, though. It's interesting because we deal with a lot with veterans, and they're thankful. I would say, if Art, you make a chime in on this, we're thankful that we served. The recognition is nice, but I know very few that are looking for it.
Right.
Very, very few.
Right.
So, like when they stand, at an event, they like, if you're a veteran, stand up. We're proud to stand up. Like I'm proud that I served. I'm served in the Coast Guard and the Air Force, but I don't think many of them are looking for it. And I would say he's probably the same way. What do you think, Favre?
You're exactly right. Yeah, when that happens, you stand up for about a second or two, and then you sit right back down.
Yeah,
you don't need all that recognition. Exactly.
Yeah, it's up and down quick. Yeah.
It is.
Back down. So
it
that's
is.
true. That's
Our kids were excited, that their daddy served, and we have a lot of family in a lot of family members that were in the military, and a lot of them served for a long time. But when they're wanting to invite their daddy to the veterans programs and stuff like that, at first he was a little hesitant, but then he went, but at first it was hard for him.
I'm not sure it really ever hit me until I saw my grandson was proud that I came to one of his events in uniform. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You'd rather them be. I'm way more thankful if my kids are excited about me being in the military than a stranger. So I'm sure he felt the same way. I'm sure he felt the same way. So I would say there were a lot of hurdles with that, especially serving in the military, and Favre served as well, and how that affects your family later on in life, right? And I think we have asked you some questions, and one of the things that you had wrote on here that really I kind of wanted to just talk about at the beginning is just the impact of being a veteran, and then how in trying to present themselves the right way, and how. Tell me a little bit about how that first interaction was with military life for you. Like, so your husband served, you were out for a year or so, you guys got together. What was the first interaction with you and your husband about being in the military?
Gosh, the first interaction was, during that time getting ready for the wedding, when I met some of his, Mike and Chris that came down that stood in our wedding, and it was the first time that I really got to listen to some of their stories and just see them interact together. That was probably our first time. I mean, we got married pretty quickly, so there weren't a lot of months in between to talk about all of it. But seeing them talk about it and seeing that connection and bond, and they're still close today. Right. That was probably my first time talking about his service.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and because I think, again, Favre, you chime in as you see fit, but it never goes away. Like the bond that you have with military personnel while being in the military, well, it never goes away. I still have. I can see my drill instructors from boot camp in 1993. I can see them right now. I can remember the people that I was in boot camp with, and that connection, it never goes away, does it? I mean,
you're exactly right. Again, that brotherhood or even a sisterhood. I mean, that bond is something that'll never be broken. And even in a wedding, having somebody to stand in, that's a special moment to be a part of something that's special between you two, that's awesome.
Because a lot of times we're discussing those things when we're either deployed or away or on annual tour. We're talking about, you can imagine that men talk whatever that talk is, but I'll better digress from that. But anyway, just being him getting married, I'm sure they were super excited for him and thankful, and that's really cool. That's really cool. I know you have a huge faith background as well, and I think me and you both know how important that is. Tell us a little bit about how maybe the faith part of it kind of played into your wedding and in your marriage, and how that has kind of driven you guys through that.
Oh, wow. So, like I said, we didn't have a long courtship or anything. So I met Jim on a Friday. We went on our first date on a Saturday. And that Sunday, he would call his mom every Sunday. He said, I met the woman I'm going to marry. And we really felt like, God was preparing each of us, and we fell in love pretty quickly, engaged 3 months later, married 6 months later. But we just knew. We were at that time, I was out of college working. He was out of the military working. We were just in that, neither one of us were looking, but it was just a God thing.
Yeah.
We always say, we're not perfect, but we're perfect for each other.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And that's who God wanted, me to have, and
yep.
I'm who, He wanted him to have. So
Hey, that's a beautiful thing, though. That's a beautiful thing, because I think a lot of people wish they had that story. And I'm sure that it's an encouraging, what I always found interesting, and we've talked about this even on the Bible study, is that, God gives us many more chances than we deserve. And I think a lot of times people think, well, I missed that opportunity to have that story, not realizing they still can have that story.
They can.
And you still can have that story with the spouse that you're with, even if you don't get along. So I think that's a beautiful thing.
You can.
That's a beautiful thing. So that's pretty cool. I'm a big believer in the stories and the life that we try to set out. It's just not always the best, because we tend to mess things up. But you mentioned in some of the information that we got from you and some of our discussions about God's timing. Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit more about how maybe some things in life where it's been God's timing for you.
Yeah, so we can have the best laid out plans.
True.
And they're just not what God has in store for us. And that's something that's become prevalent with this coming up with Jim. Just, starting 10 years ago with his first surgery, you make these plans, you save, you're going to retire early at 55, everything. You just have all these plans, and you're working to do all these things for your family. And something as simple as your health that we do take for granted can come in the way of that, in a sense, but at the same time help you grow and know that it's just a different plan.
What can you tell us a little bit about some of those health hurdles, whatever you'd like to share? What are some of the hurdles that you guys have had through the health issues?
So I guess this started about 10 years ago, and that's why I'll say, things presented themselves much later, after him getting out of the military. So he's 100% total and permanent disabled. And ExxonMobil retired him medically in 2020 after his third big surgery. So he has spine damage, a lot of nerve damage, and just, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. So trying to, I guess, navigate and learning a new way. Right? When somebody's in pain or they're going through a lot, you realize that that's not my Jim. That's the pain talking, or the actions or inactions and things like that. So,
tell us a little bit about the surgeries that you guys have gone through. In my mind, I look at families go through things together. So if my wife has a surgery, we had a surgery. If he's been in the military, y'all were in the military. So tell me about some of the surgeries you guys have gone through.
Okay. So his first surgery was in 2015. He had a 4-level fusion surgery. Another big surgery was in 2018. And then we went to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville in 2020 for a third major surgery to stabilize his spine, fuse more levels. And so going through that, I would say trying to naturally gain your strength through Christ, but also just being there, being supportive. But it does become a breaking point, I think. It becomes, as you go through these surgeries and you're being there for your spouse and your family, because we have children. It's also recognizing that I needed him to do everything he could that he had control over for our family, just like I was doing for our family. And so we had those raw discussions, where like after his big surgery in Mayo Clinic in 2020, they offer this pain rehabilitation program for 3 weeks, outpatient, where you go and you learn this is your new way of life. This is physical therapy, occupational therapy, individual therapy, all these different components now. You got to learn how to live going forward, with what you have and the damage that you have. And I'll never forget, he didn't want to go. He was like, I'm not going to go. I don't want to be away from y'all. I don't want to, and I'm like, this is what we need, by you not doing this is affecting us, our marriage and our family. Yeah. And he said something a couple of days later, irrelevant of what he said, but hurtful. I was stung a little bit, and I don't go back and forth or anything like that. But that next morning, I was sitting in the dining room, and I said, I just want you to know that if we allow it, this will tear our marriage apart and our family. And that was in 2020. I said, we can't, it will if we allow it. And I'm not going to allow it. I'm doing everything I can not to have that happen. And he, I guess, sat on it for a little while. And I guess it was Monday or Tuesday the following week, he called Mayo Clinic and called to see if he could get in the program. And it was a 6-month wait. Now, granted, just so you know, later that night, I was in my bedroom crying out to God saying, I can't do this anymore. He needs to do this program. It was also part of acceptance and things like that, that they help you with. And he called and said a 6-month wait. I'm like, okay. And I thought inside, that's it. I'm not going to make it.
The 6 months is a long time.
I'm not going to make 6 months. But I asked him to please call back and get on the waiting list. And within that week, Mayo Clinic called and said they had a cancellation. The soonest he was going to be able to go was April. They had an opening the next week.
Come on.
And that was a God thing. God knew that I couldn't do it. That's one of the things about supporting someone is that, you get depleted, and then you get filled up again, and God gives you, and he equips you, and he gives you the strength and when you need it. And he knew I needed it. I needed something. I needed, And so we went. Our children, we drove to Florida. We dropped him off. And when I say this is a God thing, this is really a little bit emotional. Well, very emotional for me. But the fact that he went was a win, And then when he was there, we dropped him off on a Friday. I drove back on a Saturday. And then my dad was hospitalized with COVID. And later ended up dying 34 days later.
So sorry.
And, thank you. But it was the fact that I remember him calling and saying, I need to be there with you. And I said, no. You are exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, that's right.
God has you exactly where you need to be for you, for me. I can't give you anything right now. And I couldn't at that point. I needed to be there for my daddy, for his wife. She had COVID. 3 out of 4 of my parents had COVID. So it was like I needed that. And God had him there. He said, well, now if something changes, I said, if something changes, we'll fly you home. But you're exactly where you need to be. And it was God's grace. He was there for the full 3 weeks. And then, when he got home, they tried everything with Daddy. But then we had our end-of-life session, which he was there.
Right.
There was nothing left unsaid. But God worked all that out in the sense of he already knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, thankfully, right? COVID, it's amazing in our life how COVID is going to be looked back upon, about how it was such an emotional roller coaster. But I want to go back to one thing that you were saying earlier, though, because I think it's super important, is that emotional bank. Like
Yes.
we pour emotion out of it, but how important it is to fill that back up. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that you are pouring out way more than you're putting in, and how important it is to fill that bank back up. What are some ways that maybe during that time, or even now, or something you could just give us that? How do you fill your emotional bank back up?
A lot of it has to do with, I have a morning routine with my prayer and my devotions and different things like that. But honestly, it's not even, I get away with friends and things like that, but it's that alone time sometimes. Like I did an Airbnb in a little farmhouse in Ethel, and I just wanted to be by myself. And I wanted to recharge, and I wanted to walk the property and be with nature, and, and just asking for it. I think just asking for it, and it comes in different times too, I think. For me, coping, I've tried to compartmentalize things, and that's helped. I'm just now, unpacking certain things since last fall. But I think you ask to be recharged. And I also think that God gives it to you when you need it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been moments where I needed it. There was no other way. Whether I'm crying in the shower or, in the bathroom or whatever, he knew I need you to intervene. And he did. And he gives you that strength.
I tried to write down the word compartmentalize, but I couldn't spell it. You should really see how I spelled that. But, men and women handle things differently. I mean, if they just do. There is a distinct difference between men and women. Most women can't or don't compartmentalize, because it's all tied together. My wife has made some really good analogies. It's taught me quite a bit. Just kidding. Not really. But she talks about how it's a ball of yarn, that everything is connected. Like everything in this ball is connected. And she's like, so anything that happens in life, it's connected to everything else. So I think compartmentalizing for you is it's interesting, because I don't think a lot of people do that.
So I'll tell you this, to be able to cope with something like this, because we're 10 years in, but I'd say it's been really, really difficult since 2018 after the second surgery. And for me, I'm all about the ball of yarn, okay? We're emotional beings.
That's right.
We're threaded into everything. But when you have a husband and when you have children and the world keeps spinning and you're grieving what you had before, I had to compartmentalize to be able to make it. And when I say that, that's not a negative. That's, you have to compartmentalize and say, when he got back from Mayo, he said, how have you stayed with me this long? How have you dealt with this? And I'm like, because you are not my Jim. When you say these things, when you do these things, this is the pain, and I love you, the love and devotion's there. But I had to compartmentalize, especially with all the appointments, all the surgeries. It's not that I'm becoming numb, but you do have to, for other things in your life to continue, because there's other things going on other than just him.
Understood. Yeah.
I have 2 children. I have a job. I have a family. I have all the things that I do. I had to compartmentalize. Now, sometimes that was good, and sometimes maybe not so. I put a lot into work as an escape, thinking I could fix something because I couldn't fix it at home, and which is what led me to here. But I think you have to, in certain situations when you're trying to cope and really say, okay, how can I get through this day? How can I get through this surgery? How can I get through this? Same thing with the doctor's appointments. You stay hopeful, and of course we have our faith, but you have to get off the emotional roller coaster. I mean, we are emotional beings, but we have to get off the roller coaster. Like, I can't go to every doctor's appointment and think this is it, or this surgery is it, and then because I saw what it did to him. So I learned from him. I learned from seeing him mentally and emotionally drop all the way down, just like a roller coaster, and then come back up when there was another appointment or another procedure or another. And when you see someone hurting and suffering like that, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, I don't want to do that. I need to be strong for him. So if I'm doing it, then we're both out.
Yeah, right.
So that's why I had to learn to compartmentalize certain things for me.
Yeah, the compartmentalizing is just, the military teaches that. Like that's one of the things that they teach you. Like, I mean, when when it's go time, it doesn't matter what's happening at home. When you've got to make a decision, nothing else matters, and they teach you that. And so, and many times that's good, right? Many times it's good, but it also makes a lot of people that come from the military or have a military background as not as emotional.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what hurt me in the military, because I'm just an emotional person. Like, I just am. I mean, we could cry now together if you want, but I just am. But I think that's also why I'm a chaplain, because I didn't want to. I wanted to help. And I think it's interesting how the military teaches that. Let's go back to one thing real quick, though, about the whole emotional bank. The way that I fill my emotional tank is barbecue. Did you know that?
Yum.
I know.
So anything comfort, right?
Yeah, barbecue is God's gift to us, and the good sauce, it's just good. But, there's a lot of people do, different things, working out. That's funny, I say barbecue and then working out.
Right.
Probably don't go together. But what are some other ways maybe that you do that? Because I think that's really important, especially coming from a spouse. What are some other ways maybe that you fill that emotional tank? So here's some things you talked about, right? Getting off by yourself when you do the Airbnb thing, I think is brilliant. Brilliant. I think that's so important. I actually have just looked up one while we're sitting here. Just kidding. But what are some other ways? Because I think that's really important. Your faith, you said,
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, my faith, being around my family and friends, like I said, even if it's not a trip, just going to my parents. They live a mile away, and they help fill me up. I mean, I have wonderful family and friends. I've started doing, I don't exercise, I haven't exercised in years, but I started doing wall Pilates. I'm trying to do anything that I can think of that's going to help me relax or help me feel more positive or give me more strength, really. But I think it's being with other people. I mean, I think iron sharpens iron, like we talk about all the time. So I think, being around people who support you and love you and just being away with them and, kind of fills you up. And then when you press the garage door opener that when the garage door opens, that reality is set in. You're home and you're not trying to escape what's at home, but it gives you a little bit more strength.
I was thinking that when you said that you were going to say there's an old car or something sitting in your garage. That always makes me feel better. Maybe that's the wrong thing. I love all of that. I think that is so important. I think one thing too, excuse me. I think one thing too that we tend to forget about, but I want you to know, is that you are a sense of encouragement as well. Like when people look at you, I'm talking about Vickie, like I've talked to people, right? And they look at you as a sense of encouragement too. And you're helping people, and you're looking to be, you're looking to fill your emotional bank, but you are filling others as well. So thank you for that. I think that's pretty cool. One little phrase you said in here, and I just kind of want to get your opinion on it again, that you no longer associate grief with only death.
Right. So that's a tough one, right?
That's a tough one. That's a lot.
Yeah, I've learned that's probably one of the tougher ones. I think growing up, grief was when you lost someone.
Right.
That was what I associated grief with, and going through this has shown me that it's not. That it could be anything that's a void, but specifically, let's just say with this situation, I had to grieve. The relationship that I have with Jim. And that's not a negative. I mean, whether or not there's health issues or not, your marriage is going to grow and change throughout the years anyway. But I had to grieve that, my Jim, that I like to say right now, is not the same.
Understood.
And same thing with my children, right? You grieve that, they're growing up, or you grieve that, one's moved out of the house now. You grieve a job. You grieve, some people grieve their identity and who am I? Who am I, that person? Am I still the same person? Am I grieving that old person that I used to think that I wanted to continue to be, or different things? But I just think that grief is so much more than death. I think it can be so many different things.
Yeah, that's, I found that just really... I find it really interesting, because I think in life, there's so many things that we do grieve. And I think what we tend to do is not recognize it. Like, it's okay to grieve.
It is.
It's okay to grieve.
It's okay.
And everybody has a different length of grieving. You know, I'm grieving my dad, and my dad's still here. Like, but he's not. You know, my dad's
Right.
got full-blown dementia and Alzheimer's, but he's still here, but he's not. And I think grieving just comes in different avenues in your life. It actually changes throughout life, right? Because like you said, you could once just thought grieving had to do with death, and now it's a lot more to it. Do you feel like as you've gotten older, you know, now 24, do you feel like you've changed the way that you deal with grief? Like, do you think you've gotten better at it? Or I don't know if better is a word,
I don't
but
know
you
if
know
better's
what
a
I mean.
word, but I think that I'm very self-aware.
Yeah, good point.
Very self-aware. I think I've been able to recognize it.
Okay.
You know, even before Kelly Clarkson came out and said it's okay not to be okay, it was okay not to be okay. And then when I'm able to recognize certain things that I'm grieving.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I'm able to recognize it. And I mean, I don't think that everyone, you know, goes through the same phases or at the same time or have to necessarily go through all the different
Right,
ones that they
right,
say. I
right.
just think that it's recognizing that you are grieving something and just dealing with it.
Yeah.
And it could be you skip all the other steps that they talk about, you know, anger
Yeah.
and bargaining and
right,
all that.
right.
But some of it is just you're sad,
Yeah.
you know, and you wish that you had what you had before.
Recognizing, that's a good way to put it. I think I think that's a strong thought there. Tell me a little bit, Farv, you've dealt with a lot with this as well. Tell me, Farv, a little bit of your ideas on grieving and how you've dealt with grieving as well.
Dealing with both sides and then dealing with like PTSD and guilt, it's really difficult sometimes to juggle those things, but having people in our lives like mentors, counselors, therapists, people that really help are really, really important things, I think, and having them at arm's length are very, very, very important to success, survival in some cases. In my case, that's my success story. That's my testimony. And that's probably, you know, why a lot of us are still here. You know, that's what's keeping us as military and veterans. I believe that's what's keeping us afloat from that 22 a day.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think you have a really good point there too. I think that we having the right people around you is just so important. You were talking about your parents, which is phenomenal. I think it's just having the right people around you, and you got to recognize. I think it goes back to that word, right? We're recognizing the people that we have in our life that help us, right? We recognize people in our life that are not helping us, and that's okay to have people in your life that's not helping you. It's okay as long as you recognize it. But I think that's really, really important. You talk about mental health a little bit in some of the notes that I have, and I kind of wanted to get your opinion a little bit on the mental health side of it, because I'm a big proponent of mental health. Like, I think that, even here at our company with our EAP program and the things that we try to push is that we know that mental health is a hurdle. Tell us a little bit about the story with mental health and how your journey has been.
Okay. So honestly, before all this happened, Jim really didn't have any mental health issues or, necessarily. And so this has really brought about naturally for him, the mental component of being a dad, being a wife, being a provider, all the things, and then just feeling that he's fallen short of that and seeing how that's affected him mentally. It's not just the physical part, it's the mental has been extremely difficult for him. And it still is. It still is. As recent as last, a few weeks ago, just having those lowest moments, in 18, when they sent him home, I was there, and he said, if you wouldn't have been here, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
And I guess when you see someone you love, be at that low point, you just want to be there and support them. And we just sat there and cried together. I mean, what else do you do? When they think that they'll be better off, if they're not here, they feel like a burden. I think some people feel like a burden whenever they get to that point. You know?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And they're not.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's pretty amazing that part of your story is being there for him and him recognizing that. You know, I have an somebody sent us an audio clip that I wanted you to kind of hear. I wanted you to get your opinion on this clip. And let's listen to a little bit of an audio clip here, and then you tell me kind of what you think about that. We have that ready?
Hey, Vickie. I was asked, and I'm very thankful I was asked to share with you and then the listeners of this podcast what you mean to me. To start off, most importantly, you're a very strong Christian woman with a deep, deep faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. You're an example for others that you touch. You treat our family and others with love and compassion, and it's truly genuine. That is your hobby, is to make other people feel great. You know, our Bible says for us to do to others what we would have them do to you, and you follow this, but you take it a little bit further and treat others how God loves us. You're truly a blessing to me and a treasure for others to know. I'm always amazed at how you find the time to help others, and you somehow find the time to help with any charity events. You know, groups like the Bust Out Breast Cancer, veterans and military support programs, and many, many others. You know, we've been married for 25 years, and you've always been there for me, our family, and others in times of need. I'm beyond blessed to have you as my wife and my best friend. I love you, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to have some tricks up our sleeves, but
Yeah, y'all did.
I mean, just how amazing your story is that, you know, you have.
Yeah, it's
Let's take a break.
yeah, let's take a break.
You gotta stop crying, or I'm gonna cry. We can't. We just can't cry. You know what I mean? So.
Who can?
Oh. Yeah. Yeah. That was sweet. Bless
That was
his
very
heart.
sweet. That was very sweet.
You know,
And you know him as well as we do, right? Or Favre does. You know, he wasn't gonna do a video, but he said, "I'll send an audio."
Yeah, he won't do a video.
Yeah. No, that was cool though. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Vickie, let's look at a couple of pictures that you sent in, and we're going to show them on the screen, and you just kind of tell us what they are and when they were and a little bit about them. All right? First one.
So that was when he was, I guess he'd already graduated and he was getting some award that day. Young. I think he was
Those stripes
19.
on that shoulder mean something, though. They that's your first ones, right? So
Yeah,
that's your
so that
first.
was young. He
That
was
was
young
young.
there.
What year do you think that was?
It was probably 94.
Okay. So we kind of came into the military at the same time. I came in '93. So all right, next picture. All right.
Okay, that was recently for Mother's Day. He and I try to get. Well, I don't have him in a lot of pictures since the last few years. Just he hadn't,
Understood.
felt up for it.
Yeah,
but that one
yeah.
he wanted to be in.
That's
that
a
was
great picture. It's a good memory. Happy Mother's Day. There you go. All right, what about it? Wow, this is a lot.
This is a lot. This is 1 year I did a photo shoot for Father's Day with the boys when they were real young in their daddy's military stuff. But then I also spread all this out and took pictures, and we gave it to him as a gift, or one of the gifts. And so this is his uniforms, some coffee mugs, just shirts. He has awards. I don't know what they all are. He's, like I said, he's very humble, but he's got awards and stuff like that. And
The camo's changed a few times.
That ain't just camos, Torrey. That's BDUs,
Well,
son.
that's the best one.
You right about
That's the
that.
best one. Of all the military camo, The BDUs were the best. And then, I mean, that actually looks like camo. The stuff we have now, I don't know. I'm not sure I can hide in it. But the blues have not changed. That's still the exact same. That hasn't changed at all. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
This was at Christmas, and like I said, he was up for the picture, so that was at Christmas time.
That's super cool. That's super cool. Well, as we start to wrap this up, again, we're just so thankful for you just taking the time to speak with us. And as a spouse, like I said from the beginning, it truly means something because we as men, and I will say for anybody that has a spouse, we are only as good as our spouse. I mean, that is absolute the truth. The only way that a marriage works is with two people pulling the same way. And there's a lot of stories of people that don't pull the same way and don't quite make it. I think what's remarkable about your story, and you're so to be commended for this, is just how you guys have persevered. So as we kind of dive out of this, tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on how you have persevered and what it means to persevere through these things.
Oh, wow. When you get married, you really are in love, and you really think that you can't love this person anymore. And you take your vows, and you mean them. I mean,
sure,
you mean them when you say them, but when they come to fruition, and you have to really stick to them, it shows you just how much love you have for that person. I mean, when I said through sickness and in health, I never would have thought at 39 my husband would have had this.
Right.
And that's okay. And you just continue to push through. I mean, we say one day at a time, and we're both trying to do our best. We do keep Christ, of course, in the middle of our relationship. He's our third person in our relationship. So, and that gives us strength. But it's a whole nother level. I think your love and devotion, it grows. Your faith continues to grow. But you just push on.
Yeah, that's super impressive. Tell us about a mentor maybe that has helped you along the way. Who is someone, you talked about your parents a little bit earlier, if that's one of them, great, but who's been a mentor to you, maybe even at your time at performance or in your career that's kind of helped you along the way?
You mean professionally?
Sure, or either. Okay,
well, I've had some great mentors professionally. First job out of college, Betsy Baker Miller, professional woman. My mom has been a huge mentor professionally and personally. And everything she's overcome. And a lot of professional mentors, if you will. Yeah. But personally, like I said, I'm blessed with so many wonderful friends and family. And my parents, like I said, all four of them. But my daddy, was a retired pastor, and he was my counsel.
There you go.
So this Father's Day going to the cemetery was just one of those ball-out sessions, where... Wish that he was here. But he was a mentor. I mean, all four of my parents, but when I say spiritually, he always knew the right thing to say.
Yeah. My dad was, like I said, he's still here, but he don't talk a whole lot. But he was a man of few words. My daddy wasn't a big talker, but he was always there. Daddy's famous quote was, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it is what
all right.
It is.
But there's so much truth to it. So, yeah, I definitely understand that. But again, so we, every time that we have a podcast guest, we're just so thankful and so grateful for you. But we also like to give a couple of gifts. So I did bring you, sorry, I came away from the mic. Travis won't like that. But I brought you a book.
Okay.
I brought you a book. I wanted to give that to you.
Thank you.
And I also brought you one of...
he's great, yeah.
Yep, and I also wanted to bring you one of my coins. See, we coin a lot in the military. It's a big deal to us, but this is actually my personal coin that I wanted to hand to you.
Thank you. Thank you. That is so sweet. That is so sweet.
Yep.
Thank you.
So again, thank you again. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for what you do for our company. You're such a mentor to a lot of people and so encouragement to a lot of people. And for that, we're just so thankful. So thanks for coming to our podcast today.
Thank y'all so much. Y'all are great.
All right. That wraps it up. Thanks again for coming to the podcast. Appreciate all of you attending, and we'll be standing by.